Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, pleased to be joined by the young prodigy, lifetime Longhorn CJ Vogel, and we're here for your weekly preview for the Longhorns' upcoming opponent, the last regular season opponent of the season, but it is a doozy. They are rekindling the rivalry with the Texas A&M Aggies, so we will talk about that, of course, here on your game week preview, brought to you by our good friends over at MyBookie. MyBookie, make sure you're in the game with MyBookie. Play any matchup, hundreds of college player props, and more over at mybookie.ag. We'll give you some more details about that in just a second. But CJ, we've been waiting on this game and talking about it, it seems like, for a long time. But the date is finally here. It is finally upon us. The Longhorns versus the Aggies. It won't be quite the top 10 matchup we thought it would be. The Aggies agged it up versus Auburn on the road there, but still a top 20 matchup and a lot on the line, a spot in the SEC title game.
Yeah, winner goes to Atlanta. What more stakes do you need? Of course, emotions, the passion, everything's going to be at top notch for this game. The first game back in 13 years. I know Texas fans are excited. A&M's excited to host. It should be one of the best environments of college football the entire season, and it's going to be the biggest game of the entire season. So, hey, Texas been good on the road, Rod. Hopefully, for Texas fans' sakes, for us here at On Texas Football, a win would go a long way and buy the tickets, essentially, for the Longhorns to Atlanta for the SEC championship game against Georgia.
Yeah, speaking of the ticket, is the highest average ticket price of any game so far this season. That includes Texas, Georgia. That includes Michigan, Ohio State. That's wild to think about that. That's how big this game is. Before we get started and breaking it down, let me give you a message from our friends over at MyBookie. With all the excitement of this season, make sure you're in the game with MyBookie. Bet any matchup, hundreds of college player props and more, and take advantage of weekly risk-free bets. The best part is you can do it all anytime, anywhere, straight from your phone. Visit mybookie.ag and use the promo code ONTexas to get started. It's MyBookie's 10-year anniversary, which means they are hooking you up. Bet big and bet confidently with the risk-free Thursdays. If your boosted bet doesn't hit, you'll get your money back weekly. No sweat, win-win bets all season long. If you sign up right now, use the code ONTexas to cash in on a double deposit bonus. It's a no-brainer. Double the cash in your account before you even place your first bet. But don't wait. It's only available for a limited time only. And also for you folks out there who are seasoned bettors and winners with MyBookie, right now they're offering MyBookie Plus. It's simple. It's a loyalty rewards program, and the more you play, the more you earn as you progress through the tiers. You can unlock exclusive promotions, epic giveaways, and cash back in your account. That's MyBookie Plus. Go use the code ONTexas at mybookie.ag and cash in on that double deposit bonus. All right, CJ, let's start with what is easily, in my opinion, the most compelling matchup will be that Aggie defense versus the Texas offense. A lot of discussion about Quinn Ewers' ankle injury, just considered a mild sprain, reportedly, but there could be lingering effects. That Aggie defensive front is one of the best in the country. They got several NFL players just on the defensive line alone. Nick Skelton, Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner. They got some dogs. What are your thoughts about the Texas offense going up against this Texas A&M defense?
That'll be the key. That will be the absolute key. Can the Texas offensive line provide the running lanes necessary, but also provide enough time for Quinn Ewers? And I don't know what level of health we'll see Quinn Ewers at. I don't know if he'll be 50%, 80%, 100%. We'll see. But all I know is if there's a limitation to what he's able to do mobility-wise in the pocket, Texas could be in for a bit of a taller task than expected. Of course, you look at these A&M edge rushers. I mean, we know about Nick Skelton. We know about Shamar Turner, Shamar Stewart. Cassius Howell's a guy that I don't think has been getting a lot of love right now. And you start looking at these numbers, Rod. I'm looking at them now from PFF. 33 pressures from Nick Skelton, 30 from Shamar Stewart. How about 25 from Cassius Howell? So that tells me one thing right there. They got a lot of guys that can get after the quarterback, but also they love to bring Torian York from the middle, who's got 20 pressures of his own and a pair of sacks. They will muddy the waters with different looks, different fronts, different schemes, and that Texas offensive line better come to play. That's got to be one part of the game that does travel for the Longhorns to College Station.
Yeah, I agree. They're top 20 in pressures, top 20 in tackles for loss as well. So they want to force some negative plays. They want to wreak some havoc on your offensive line and confuse blocking schemes. One of the things I noticed, they do a lot of twists and stunts up front. Now, it also works really well to create pressure, confuse blocking schemes, and create some of those negative plays. They also top 20 in tackles for loss, generated with 78 of those tackles for loss. But oftentimes you can see them get out of position with some of these gap exchanges. And I wonder if Texas, with the running game clicking now, the wide zone seems to be back. They had 7 10-plus yard runs against Kentucky. Might have been, in my opinion, the most impressive running performance from the offense so far this season. And Definitely. If you go look at it, that wide zone, you can find creases, whether it be the cutback lane or whether it be drawing the play out. That's where you're looking for little creases of daylight. And oftentimes when the Aggies are doing those twists and stunts, you'll see little slivers of daylight. If Trey Wisner, Jaden Blue. Jaden Blue's got that burst to be able to hit it real quick. But if Jaden Blue's burst and explosivity along with Trey Wisner's patience, they can take advantage of that, because that essentially is what's happened the last couple of SEC games with Auburn and against South Carolina. That rush defense, although it's a really impressive rush defense, got NFL guys on that front seven. We even talked about Torian York, who's one of the better linebackers in the SEC. There seems like their rush defense, it may be in decline the last couple of weeks that I've noticed. Here's a number for you. If you go look at that3 defense, the last 3 weeks, so and that includes 2 SEC games. There's a McNeese State in there somewhere. They're averaging 3.8 yards per rush in the last 3 weeks, compared to 4.7 usually. Something's happened to that run game, and maybe it's just the loss of Le'Veon Moss, who I agree. He was their most. Imagine Texas run game losing Jaden Blue. Right? Yeah. And so he's better than Jaden Blue, because he's actually a better all-around back. But in terms of losing the explosive element, the explosive identity of your running game, they lost the explosive element in the run game, and I don't know if they recovered. Right now, Marcel Reed is pretty much the only explosive element in the run game that you have to account for. And Texas does an amazing job accounting for the dual threat quarterback, as we've seen in PK's tenure.
Yeah, I totally agree. Marcel Reed brings a different challenge to his game. And, the one thing that I liken the 2 quarterbacks to is look at what A&M was able to do against a kind of a platonic quarterback with Garrett Nussmeier, a guy that couldn't necessarily extend, versus what a Lenore Sellers was able to do. Breaking tackles, evading sacks, making sure that those negative plays either turned into throwaways or positive yards, some way that helped keep South Carolina ahead of the chains. We've talked about it with Quinn. Hey, that big challenge is going to be those self sacks. When he feels pressure, can he get the ball out, right? You don't want to have 3 strip sack fumbles again, like we saw against Georgia. And I'm not going to say that A&M's pass rush is Mikael Williams and Jalen Walker, but they've certainly got some guys that we just went over. But for me, again, Marcel Reed provides a different level for Texas to defend, because he can evade, he can throw. Fortunately, Texas does very well against rushing quarterbacks, mobile quarterbacks. We just saw it 2 weeks ago against Taylon Green. The Texas edge rushers, in a way, it's a battle of the edge rushers. Who can get to Quinn? Who can contain Marcel Reed? Because if you can't do either of those offenses will have a lot of success. So that's kind of where I'm sitting at right now. Which pair of edge rushers has the better game?
That's a good. I love that. I think you might hit the nail on the head there, especially talking about Marcel Reed. He's averaging over 7 yards per rush, actually 7.6 yards per scramble, I should say. So he's great when the play breaks down, but he's kind of wiry, little slight, frail, even if you want to say that's Yeah, yes, I agree with that. So they don't run him in between the tackles on design runs. So he's most dangerous on design runs in the D gaps, outside the tight end, outside the tackle on either side. And he's averaging damn near 7 yards per rush on design runs through the D gap. So that's really when you want to watch him, on the edges and when the play breaks down. And there's only been one real quarterback to, I would say, beat Texas with their legs, and that was Dylan Gabriel. And that's because they did not plan on or game plan for Dylan Gabriel having his career rushing attempts and career day in rushing yards. That was a great tendency breaker. Usually when they know a quarterback's going to run, Jalen Milroe, Taylon Green, Diego Pavia, Texas does a great job game planning for it. And I expect that to be the case versus Marcel Reed too.
Yeah. Of course, again, the edges and the speed at linebacker for me, that's going to be the X factor for the Longhorns.
One other quick thing before we move on to the other side of the ball and talk about the Texas defense versus that we're already getting to Marcel Reed a little bit. But throw this out there too, that A&M defense, they've allowed some explosive plays via the passing game lately too. I've noticed that. Peyton Thorne and Lenore Sellers on passes 20 yards or more down the field, they completed combined over 63% of their deep passes down the field on this Aggie defense. I was a little surprised because early on in the season, they were not that leaky and vulnerable in the secondary. It feels like lately they have. Now, this could be the active dual threat quarterbacks. Both Lenora Sellers and Peyton Thorne can move around a little bit. So maybe some of that. But you're going to look at it. They average on deep passes, 20 yards or more, 22 yards per attempt. They had 3 touchdowns, 63% completion percentage. There may be some chance for Texas to take advantage of this Aggie defense on the back end on deep shots. But the Kim Kardashian, Nicki Minaj, William Sauce Cardi besides Megan Thee Stallion's butt is that's not Quinn's strength. And off of a little bit of a bum ankle, can he drive the football downfield accurately when that's not even a real strength of his? I'm not sure, but it is something that you might want to take into account watching that game if Texas can get some guys open on the back end.
Yeah, I completely agree. Again, the health of that ankle is going to help or hurt Quinn on the deep throws. That, to your point, 19 30-plus yard plays allowed through the air this year. That's 107th in the country. 10 of 40-plus. 110th in the country, 7 of 50-plus, 123rd in the country.
Damn, I didn't realize that. Yeah, that's it. If Quinn can get it there, that'll be the big question. I think there will be openings down the field, but also you need time, and you won't have a ton of it with these guys you were talking about. All right, let's flip to the other side of things. Talk about that Texas defense, which arguably is the best defense in the country, going up against Marcel Reed, going up against that Aggie offense. I think that Aggie offense has lost a little bit of this explosiveness. We were talking about that earlier with the loss of Le'Veon Moss. But something else I want to keep in mind, I went back and watched that Kentucky game. I'm sure you have as well. Texas defense, although still stellar and they're one of the best in the country, against Kentucky, I almost felt like it was inexplicable. They allowed 5 explosive pass plays, more than they've allowed in any game so far this year. It was 5 plays of 20-plus yards or more down the field. A lot of it was because of the quarterbacks extending the play, making something happen outside the pocket. Boley was really accurate outside the pocket, letting it rip. And some of those deep overs seemed like Texas would oftentimes either with eyes in the wrong place, which we saw from J.D. Barron, or just the defensive backs losing a player in zone coverage who is crossing the different dimensions of the zone coverage from one side of the coverage to the other. Now, you need time to do that. But when teams get time to do it, Kentucky, Arkansas, and Florida, they've all completed deep drags, deep crossing routes against Texas. That is something to watch because if anybody can create out of the scramble and the scramble drill, as we just talked about, a guy like Marcel Reed can do that.
Yeah, I look at maybe a PA waggle with a deep crosser, to your point, as a way to really put Texas in a bind. Because that puts a lot of stress on your defensive end to the play side, but also your play side linebacker because he's got to account for Marcel Reed taking off. Or, hey, I got a deep crosser coming over the back of my neck. I got to know where my alignment is, where my assignment is, where my help is. You got a pretty tough situation right there. Normally you have a tight end flying in from the front side as well. So I look for that kind of play to put Texas in a bind. In a way, it's a triple option just with different levels, right? Quarterback run, tight end in the flat, deep crosser from the backside. That's tough to defend with a really mobile quarterback. But to your point, I think that's the key for Texas is to force A&M to throw the rock, right? And Marcel Reed's been good. But we've seen it time and time again so far this year when A&M struggles offensively, it's because he has to sit back there and make plays in the pocket. That's what you want, especially with this Texas secondary who maybe had a down game to its standards against Kentucky. But, hey, if you're taking the number 1 pass defense on the road, I'll take your chances against a quarterback that normally isn't super precise when having to sit in the pocket and make tight window throws.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if Texas can take away the run game, take away the traditional run game, and then force Marcel Reed to be a pocket passing quarterback, then obviously he's a guy that there's not a lot of sophistication to the offense, and it's nothing against Marcel Reed. I think he is actually a really talented player, but he's a young player. And with young players, you strip the offense down to its most rudimentary form. There's not a lot of checks, not a lot of audibles. He's not adjusting and modifying things at the line of scrimmage. Why would he? Now, maybe this week they put a little bit more on his plate, but they actually have tried to make things less of a burden for him running the offense so he can relax and just run. So usually he's a guy that once the play is in, you don't see them making a lot of adjustments and audibles. Against a seasoned, veteran, experienced defense like Texas, I think they'll be changing the looks pre-snap and post-snap. I think they're going to be changing up the front a little bit, stemming a little bit, just to try to get this young guy to run right into a numbers disadvantage, which I've seen happen in the Auburn game a couple of times. Sometimes they'll run that speed option, or they'll run the zone read, and literally you'll see him run right into a cornerback blitz because he's not able to, he doesn't audible or check the play. So that's something also to watch. And the running game, the traditional running game, we talked about this earlier, the loss of Le'Veon Moss has really put more of a burden on Marcel Reed for the running game. These numbers come from Pro Football Focus, and they are a bit eye-popping. In the last 2 SEC games for the Aggies, they've had 2 explosive runs. This is to Auburn and South Carolina. So combined, those 2 games, 2 explosive runs via traditional handoff, traditional running game, 1.8 yards after contact per carry. They've only forced 4 missed tackles in those 2 games. And if you look at it, 3.5 yards per design carry for the running back. So you're taking away the quarterback design runs, and it's all traditional handoffs. They haven't been great. They've been losing a little bit of their mojo in a designed run game. And I went and looked at it too. You go look at it. This is a team that they are heavily reliant on the run game. And if the run game isn't working, they can't beat you as a one-dimensional team. As you just pointed out, that is the path to victory for Texas. You want to shut down their run, which I said is already declining, but you shut it down and leave no doubt and force Marcel Reed to have to drop back to beat you. That also works the complementary element. Texas offense needs to get a lead in order for that to materialize. But if that happens, I don't see many paths to A&M getting back into the game. They got to stay in this game the whole time. I don't see a comeback really happening. I think that favors Texas if they get down double digits and have to come back.
I like your point there a lot. And I think coming into the year, the biggest weak spot, or maybe just question mark in general about Texas A&M and its team in this year, was would that offensive line provide protection for Connor Wakeman? Well, you no longer have Connor Wakeman back there. You got a guy that can move around, but that protection still isn't necessarily up to par with that of some of the elite offensive lines that we see in the SEC each week. So that's something I think Texas can take advantage of as well. To your point, not having Le'Veon Moss, having to rely on Amari Daniels and E.J. Smith. Who knows if Reuben Owens will be able to go at all? If he will contribute, that would be a heck of an addition to this running back stable that otherwise doesn't necessarily put a whole lot of fear in you, not like Arkansas did, not like the Michigan running backs did. So that's something I think is worth mentioning as well. In the pass game, one thing I did want to mention, Noah Thomas, the 6'5", 6'6" wide receiver out wide, 6 touchdowns on the year. No other Aggie receiver or pass catcher has more than 2. So it feels like whenever they get to the red zone, when they get near the red zone, he had a big game against Auburn. That's the guy that they look to. They'll throw him in there. And against Texas cornerbacks, it'd be really interesting to see whether or not maybe a Kobe Black makes an appearance as kind of one of those lengthier cornerbacks. We had the same conversation against Arkansas. Texas did pretty well there. But we'll see just what, kind of shakes out whenever they get closer to the red area.
Yeah, that would be and what kind of tendency breakers we get from it. I figure on offense, A&M has got to bring something to the table Texas isn't ready for. The defense is just too good. I think A&M's defense, the way it stands right now, they're good enough to line up against Texas and win their fair share. I believe that because they got NFL guys in that front 7. So I believe they can line up against Texas and win their fair share, one-on-one straight up. That offense of the Aggies going up against the best defense arguably in the country, they can't just line up and whip Texas. They can't. They need to have a schematic, tactical, strategic advantage, and that's why there's going to be a tendency breaker on that offense. I'm not sure quite what it's going to be. They try to line up and do what they've done the last 2 SEC games against Texas. Texas is going to mollywop them.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff there, CJ, as usual. Folks, go check out our friends over at MyBookie. They do a great job. Go check out the MyBookie Plus app, MyBookie Plus. It is a loyalty rewards program for all of the seasoned MyBookie bettors out there. You can go check that out. And also check out mybookie.ag. Remember, use the promo code ONTexas, and that way you'll get a double deposit bonus. That's right, folks. You're making money with MyBookie before you even place your first bet. Just use the code ONTexas for that double deposit bonus. You can get cash in your to double the cash in your account. No brainer, folks. That's mybookie.ag. On Texas is the code to use, and MyBookie Plus. We appreciate them hooking us up. Appreciate you as well, CJ, hooking us up. And happy holidays, happy Thanksgiving to you, brother, to you and yours, and to the family. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there watching and listening. Really appreciate you guys. Hopefully, coming back next week, we'll be previewing SEC title game for the Longhorns. Yeah, no doubt about that. All right, CJ, have a good one for CJ and for our sponsor at MyBookie. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rob Babers. Thanks for watching, and until next time, hook 'em horns.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.